The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors have been proudly serving the people of this community since 1918. Service is our motto. The poor, the rich, the middle class and all are given the best of care and attention at all times. You have the privilege to select what you want. In your time of need, contact the capable, the competent, and the dependable staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home who is genuinely concerned with your care. At J.W. Williams Funeral Home, you are aptly served by the proprietor president, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, who continues the traditions and values set forth by the past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. Your announcers for the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Sunday morning program are Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, Minister Frankie Harmon, Ms. Sandra Johnson, and Deacon Earl Clark, Jr.
Thank you and good morning, friends. We come to you this morning to bring announcements, dedications, and songs. We certainly hope that your day may be brighter after listening to our program. The family of Mr. Samuel McCluster, Jr. of Richland, Georgia. The family of Mr. Willie Lee Boone of Americus, Georgia. The family of beloved church mother, Mother Grace Adams Patrick of Cordele, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for the food, the flowers, the condolences, and all other expressions of sympathy and kindness shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. Mr. Samuel McCluster, Jr., age 67, of 364 Myers Street, Richland, Georgia, died Tuesday, December 26, 2023, at the home of his beloved daughter in Americus, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Samuel McCluster, Jr., age 67, was held Sunday, January 7th, in the sanctuary of the Friendship Baptist Church in Americus, Georgia. The pastor, Bishop Melvin McCluster, officiated. The burial followed at the Mount Olive Baptist Church Cemetery in Lumpkin, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Jeannie Ann Bell Merritt McCluster, his loving and devoted children, Miss Felicia Denise McCluster of Columbus, Georgia, Mr. Sam McCluster, Richland, Georgia, Mrs. Regina McCluster Worth and her husband, Mr. Anthony Worth, and Mr. Jacory McCluster, both of Americus, Georgia. A host of beloved grandchildren, great-grandchildren, his loving and devoted sisters, Mrs. Cheryl A. Hubbard and her husband, Mr. Al Hubbard, and Miss Rebecca McCluster, both of Columbus, Georgia, and Mrs. Wallene McCluster Bryce of Jacksonville, Florida. His beloved brothers, Mr. Frederick Douglas Way and his wife, Mrs. Dolly Way of Fort Valley, Georgia, Mr. Marcellus McCluster of Gainesville, Georgia, Mr. Oscar McCluster and his wife, Mrs. Renee McCluster of Jacksonville, Florida, and Mr. James Woodson of Richland, Georgia. His beloved aunt, Mrs. Marie Frederick, and her husband, Mr. Joseph Frederick of Apopka, Florida, Mrs. Georgia Mae Johnson, and Mrs. Mabel Brown, a host of devoted nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Samuel McCluster Jr., age 67, of 364 Myers Street, Richland, Georgia. Mr. Willie Lee Boone, age 73, of Americus, Georgia, died Sunday, December 31st, 2023, at the Wilson Hospice House in Albany, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Willie Lee Boone, age 73, was held Saturday, January 13th, in the sanctuary of the Mount Zion Baptist Church in Albany, Georgia. The pastor, Dr. Daniel Simmons, officiated. The burial followed at the Oak Grove Cemetery in Americus, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Brenda Hudson Boone of Americus, Georgia, his loving and caring children, Mr. Dexter Boone and his friend, Mrs. Valencia Jones of Atlanta, Georgia, Mrs. Kelly Nelson and her husband, Mr. Gerald Nelson of Douglasville, Georgia, Dr. Tina Boone and friend, Mr. Lavaris Riles of Mableton, Georgia, and Mr. William Cedric Boone and his wife, Dr. Lakeisha Boone of Albany, Georgia. 4 beloved grandchildren. His beloved goddaughter, Mrs. Felicia Thomas of Mableton, Georgia. 2 godchildren. 1 beloved brother, Mr. Arthur Lee Boone of Americus, Georgia. 1 sister, Mrs. Mary C. and her husband, Mr. Charlie C. of Americus, Georgia. A host of beloved nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Willie Lee Boone, age 73, of Americus, Georgia. Beloved church mother, Mother Grace Adams Patrick, age 97, of 1612 South 10th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Wednesday, January 3rd, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for beloved church mother, Mother Grace Adams Patrick, was held Saturday, January 13th, in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend James B. Stokes officiated. Her pastor, the Reverend Lorinda Ray, pastor of the Beautiful Zion Baptist Church, delivered the eulogy. The burial followed at the Sunnyside Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mrs. Clara Ward and Mr. Aldun Kareem Al and his wife, Mrs. Rashid Ali of St. Petersburg, Florida. Mr. Samuel Savage and his wife, Mrs. Frances Savage of Chicago, Illinois. Mr. Arthur Patrick of Cocoa, Florida. Mrs. Sheila Butts and her husband, Sir Robert Butts of Cordele, Georgia. And Mr. Lorenzo Patrick and his wife, Mrs. Angie Patrick of Canada. Her beloved goddaughter, Dr. Vera Jones Giddens of Shingler, Georgia. Her godson, the Reverend Quentin Thomas and his wife, Mrs. Helen Thomas. A host of beloved grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. Her loving nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mother Grace Adams Patrick, age 97, of 1612 South 10th Street, Cordele, Georgia. Again, the family Mr. Samuel McCluster Jr. of Richland, Georgia, the family of Mr. Willie Lee Boone of Americus, Georgia, the family of beloved church mother, Mother Grace Adams Patrick of Cordele, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for all of the many kindnesses shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. May God bless each of you is their prayer. The J.W. Williams funeral directors serving Cordele and Vienna were in charge of each of these arrangements during the past week. And now, it is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcement. Beloved Deacon Vice Chairman Deacon Henry King Jr., age 85, of 901 South 14th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, January 4th, at his residence in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his beloved and caring son, Mr. Nathan Rhodes, and his wife, Mrs. Susan Rhodes of Oglethorpe, Georgia, his loving grandchildren, Miss Rosalind West, Miss Rosalind Johnson and her husband, Mr. Quentin Johnson, Mr. Cartine Rhodes and his wife, Mrs. Tiffany Rhodes, 21 beloved grandchildren, his loving and devoted sisters, Mrs. Wilhelmina R. Williams, Mrs. Alberta R. Hamilton, and her husband, Deacon Donald K. Hamilton, Jr., and Ms. Rose J. Rogers of Cordele, Georgia. His loving and beloved brothers, Mr. John L. Rogers and Mr. George Rogers of Cordele, Georgia, and Mr. Bobby Rogers and his wife, Mrs. Alameda Rogers of Vienna, Georgia. A beloved uncle, Mr. Augusta Telfair Jr. of Cordele, Georgia. A host of nieces, nephews, cousins, to include Ms. Rose Oakes of New York and Ms. Gloria Jean Sice and her husband Clarence Sice of Miami, Florida, and a host of other relatives and many, many sorrowing friends, to include his beloved Gethsemane Baptist Church family, survived beloved Vice Chairman Deacon Henry King Jr., age 85, of 901 South 14th Street, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for beloved Vice Chairman Deacon Henry King Jr., age 85, will be held today, Sunday, January 14th, at 1 p.m. in the sanctuary of his beloved Gethsemane Missionary Baptist Church in Cordele, Georgia. The pastor, Reverend Cecil Strawder, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Beloved Deacon Chairman and past City Commissioner, Deacon Willie B. Colson Jr., age 88, of 711 South 14th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Sunday, January 7th, at the Cordele Health and Rehabilitation Center in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and faithful and devoted wife, Mother Vanessa Corbin Colson of Cordele, Georgia, his beloved and devoted son, the Reverend Ivory Joe Corbin, and his wife, Mrs. Dorothy Corbin of Cordele, Georgia, His loving grandchildren, Miss Yolanda Corbin of Jacksonville, Florida, Mr. Jared Hopper and his wife, Mrs. Deja Hopper of California, 6 beloved great-grandchildren, 2 great-great-grandchildren, a beloved sister, Mrs. Brenda Frederick, and her husband, Deacon Greg Frederick of Cordele, Georgia, 2 sisters-in-law, Mrs. Ruby Colson of Cordele, Georgia, and Mrs. Charlie Mae Colson of Americus, Georgia, his special cousin, Miss Linda White, and Miss Diane White of Orlando, Florida, Miss Marjorie Ham of Atlanta, Georgia, and Miss Bobby James of Huntsville, Alabama, a host of beloved nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survived. Beloved Deacon Chairman, past City Commissioner of the City of Cordele, Deacon Willie B. Colson Jr., age 88, of 711 South 14th Street, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for beloved Chairman Deacon, past City Commissioner, Deacon Willie B. Colson Jr., age 88, will be held today, Sunday, January 14th at 4:30 p.m. in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Johnny Dean, pastor of the New Poplar Springs Baptist Church, will officiate. The eulogy will be delivered by his pastor, the Reverend Nelson Maynor, pastor of the St. James Baptist Church. The burial will follow at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Mrs. Vivian Harrington Williamson, age 66, of 910 South 5th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, January 5th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted husband, Mr. Willie Williamson of Cordele, Georgia, a host of other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mrs. Vivian Harrington Williamson, age 66, of 910 South 5th Street, Cordele, Georgia. The memorial service for Mrs. Vivian Harrington Williamson, age 66, will be held Friday, January 19, 2024, at 11 a.m. in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. United States Army Staff Sergeant Thomas William McRae Jr., retired, age 65, of 761 North Coney Road, Cordele, Georgia, died Monday, January 8th at his residence in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted children, Mrs. Shaveda McRae and her husband, Mr. Octavius McRae of Austell, Georgia, Mrs. Courtney Green and her husband, Mr. John Green of Tampa, Florida, Miss Erica McRae of Cambridge, England, Miss Astasia McRae of Norfolk, Virginia. 8 beloved grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild, a beloved sister, Miss Janice McRae of Augusta, Georgia, 2 beloved aunts, Miss Rosemary Brock and her husband, Mr. James Brock of Decatur, Georgia, and Miss Marion Street of Cordele, Georgia. A host of cousins to include Cameron Cunningham of Sumter, South Carolina, and Miss Kimberly Street of Cordele, Georgia. A host of other relatives and many sorrowing friends survive. United States Army Staff Sergeant Thomas William McRae Jr., retired, age 65, of 761 North Coney Road, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Army Staff Sergeant Thomas William McRae Jr., retired, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Davion S. Levant, age 30, of 701 West 28th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, January 5th at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted mother, Miss Louita Harris, and her husband Zeke Harris of Cordele, Georgia, his beloved father, Mr. Archie Lester, and his wife, Mrs. Alice Lester of Americus, Georgia, a beloved aunt who served as a second mother, Mrs. Johnny Mae Wilson Smith, and her husband, Elder William Smith of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved children, Master Davion Applin, Miss Devana Levant, Miss Tenaya Clark, Miss Alona Towns, and Miss Amari Towns, all of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved companion, Miss Akela Jackson of Cordele, Georgia. His loving and devoted sisters, Mrs. Brittany Lee and her husband, Mr. Edgar Lee, Mr. Mara Smith, and Miss Samaya Smith, all of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved brother, Mr. Tremel Wilson, and his wife, Mrs. Damon Wilson, Mr. Raphael Wilson, Mr. Archie Lester Jr., Mr. Rontavius Lester, Mr. Jaquavius Williams, and Mr. Chester King Jr. and his wife of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved aunts and uncles, Mr. Leon Wilson and his wife, Mrs. Nancy Wilson, Mr. Woodrow Wilson Jr., Deacon Johnny James Wilson and his wife, Mrs. Sheila Wilson, Mr. Roscoe Wilson and his wife, Mrs. Gladys Wilson, Mrs. Ruth Pickett, Miss Linda Wilson, Miss Barbara Wilson, Miss Mary Kitchen, Mrs. Ira B. Brown, the Reverend Nikita Lester and his wife, Mrs. Eddie Mae Lester, Mr. Lonnie Walker and his wife, Mrs. Barbara Walker, and Mr. David Lester and his wife, Mrs. Renee Lester. And a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Davion S. Levant, age 30, of 701 West 28th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Davion S. Levant, age 30, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. United States Air Force veteran, retired educator, Mr. James Edward Holloway Sr., age 63, of 178 Old Andersonville Road, Andersonville, Georgia, died Friday, January 12th, at his residence in Andersonville, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Lisa Sims Holloway, his loving and caring children, Mr. James E. Holloway Jr. of Americus, Georgia, Miss Janae Holloway of Atlanta, Georgia, and Miss Gentile Holloway of England. Two beloved grandchildren, Daquan and Nyla, his loving and caring sibling, Mr. Andrew Holloway of Decatur, Georgia, Mr. Arthur Holloway and his wife, Mrs. Barbara Holloway of Americus, Georgia, Mrs. Diane Roberts and her husband, Mr. Henry Roberts of Leslie, Georgia, Mr. Ray Holloway and his wife, Mrs. Elizabeth Holloway of DeSoto, Georgia, and Mr. Michael Holloway and his wife, Mrs. Mary Ann Holloway of Americus, Georgia. His beloved mother-in-law, Mrs. Bobby Sims of Americus, Georgia, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survived. United States Air Force veteran and retired educator, Mr. James Edward Holloway Sr., age 63, 178 Old Andersonville Road, Andersonville, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Air Force veteran and retired educator, Mr. James Edward Holloway Sr., age 63, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Miss Thelma Dolores Johnson, affectionately known as Sis, age 69, of Cordele, Georgia, died early this morning, Sunday, January 14th, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted daughters, Miss Zelda Johnson and Miss DeCarla King, both of Cordele, Georgia, a host of other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Miss Thelma Dolores Johnson, affectionately known as Sis, age 69, of Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Miss Thelma Dolores Johnson, affectionately known as Sis, age 69, will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors, serving Cordele and Vienna, are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Friends, that conclude our funeral notices for this morning. And as always, we do remind you concerning our pre-funeral arrangements planning available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home, with packages available with a single pay, a 3-year pay, a 5-year pay, and a 10-year pay. So please stop by and talk with us concerning your pre-funeral arrangements needs available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. And also whole life insurance is available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.
And now for announcements. The Spring Hill Baptist Church of Tippinville Annual Family Friends Day will be observed on Sunday, January 21st at 11 o'clock a.m. Everyone is invited to attend, and dinner will be served. Sister Mary Ann Lewis, Secretary; Mother Martha Miller, Church Mother; Deacon Calvin Youngblood, Chairman of Deacons; Reverend Choice Cobb Sr. is the pastor. The Ebenezer Baptist Church Family and Friends Day service will be observed on Sunday, January 21st at 11 o'clock a.m. Everyone is cordially invited to attend. Deacon Morris McClendon, Chairman of Deacons; Reverend Samuel Stokes is the pastor. You're cordially invited to worship with the McAfee Grove Baptist Church of Leesburg during their family nights on Tuesday at 7 o'clock p.m., small class study Thursdays at 7 p.m., Sunday morning worship service at 9 a.m., and you may join them by calling 425-436-6341. The access code is 708058. Minister Tawanda Daniels, Secretary; Dr. Robert L. Morgan Sr. is the pastor. The Greater Gum Creek Family and Friends Day service will be observed today, Sunday, January 14th at 10:30 a.m. The pastor, Reverend Joseph Hogbrook, will deliver the message. Everyone has a cordial invitation to attend. Mother Norma Solomon, Church Mother, Deacon Zachary Fields, Chairman of Deacons, Reverend Joseph Hogbrook is the pastor. The new St. Stephen's Church of Cordial Family and Friends Day will be held today, Sunday, January 14th at 11 o'clock a.m. Everyone has a cordial invitation to attend. Dr. Frankie Harmon, pastor. The Albany, Georgia alumni and Delta Rho chapters of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and the Eta Omicron and Chi Epsilon chapters of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated are sponsoring a suit, socks, and hat giveaway Monday, January 15th from 10 a.m. until 12 o'clock noon at the Mount Calvary Baptist Church Annex Building located 108 Joe Wright Drive, Cordial, Georgia. Everyone is invited to come out and support this event. The new William Grove Baptist Church of Cordial 28th church anniversary and the 7th anniversary of the beloved pastor will be Sunday, January 21st at 11 o'clock a.m. The Spring Hill Baptist Church and Pastor Shannon Sollett will be in charge of the service. Mother Gradine Ford, Church Mother, Deacon Winfred Green, Chairman of Deacons, Reverend Nikita Lester is the pastor. The Cordial Christ County chapter of the NAACP would like to remind you of the upcoming events that will begin on tomorrow for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. The event will begin with our annual MLK Day commemorative walk and parade, which will start at 9:30 a.m. The lineup will begin at 8:45 a.m. in the parking lot of Southwestern Elementary School and proceed to East 24th Avenue on 7th Street and proceed east on East 24th Avenue to South 7th Street at the Cordial Lions Club. All churches and community organizations are welcome to drive, walk, and their vehicles to be a part of the procession. The Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Program will be held at the Cordial Lions Club beginning at 11 o'clock a.m. with the guest speaker, Reverend Darius Butler. We thank you for your continued support and we look forward to each of you joining us tomorrow as we will begin our celebration for honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Everyone is cordially invited to attend. And remember, it starts with me, shifting the cultural climate. We invite you to come and be a part of the events for that day. As we continue with our announcements, the Spring Hill Baptist Church Family Friends Day service will be held on Sunday, January 28th at 10 o'clock a.m. Everyone is cordially invited to attend. Sister Easter Patrick, Secretary, Mother Lily Mathis, Church Mother, Deacon Eddie Byron, Chairman of Deacons, Reverend Shannon Sollett is the pastor. You're cordially invited to worship at the Mount Calvary Baptist Church in their annual Family Friends Day service, which will be held on Sunday, January 21st, beginning at 10:45 a.m. Prophetess Lashika Williams will be the guest speaker, and everyone is cordially invited to attend. Mrs. Linda Rollins, Family Day Chairperson, Deacon Leon Spears, Chairman of Deacons, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Pastor. You're cordially invited to worship at the Greater Mars Tabernacle Baptist Church today, Sunday school at 9 o'clock a.m., worship service at 9:30 a.m. Everyone has a cordial invitation to attend. Mother Mary Henderson, Church Mother, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Chairman of Deacons, Dr. K.M. Williams is the pastor. The Mount Zion First African Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them in their conference call scheduled Sunday morning at 10 a.m., prayer Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 12 o'clock noon. Bible study is held each Wednesday at 5 o'clock p.m. You may call in at 339-209-6419. Deacon Joe Wedge is Chairman of Deacons. Dr. Dan James III is the pastor. Everyone is cordially invited to worship at the Gethsemane Baptist Church today. Worship service begins at 10:30 a.m. Deacon Johnny Wilson, Chairman of Deacons. Brother Cecil Strawder is the pastor. The New Oakwood Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them each Sunday for Sunday school at 9:15 a.m., worship service at 10 o'clock a.m. Face covering is required. Deacon Alonzo Jones, Chairman of Deacons. Reverend W.W. Wilson is the pastor. The Beautiful Zion Baptist Church invites everyone to worship with them today at 11 o'clock a.m. Reverend Lorinda Ray is the pastor. That concludes our announcements for today.
And now for dedication. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following: in loving memory of Mother Annie Lou Beal, also known as Baby Doll, who departed this life January 10th, 2023. Dedication requested by her beloved children, grandchildren, and the entire Bill family. Gone but not forgotten. A loving memory of Mrs. Deidre Harvey Bruton, who would have celebrated her birthday Friday, January 12th. Dedication requested by her beloved daughter, Miss Janae Bruton, the Harvey and Bruton family, her beloved mother, Mrs. Geraldine Harvey, and family. Gone but not forgotten. A loving memory of Mrs. Mamie Rose Royal, who departed this life January 12, 2012, and would have celebrated her birthday January 18. Dedication requested by the Royal family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mrs. Mamie Rose Royal and all of the members of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Baptist Church and Pastor Dr. K.M. Williams, all pause and remember the life and service and work of Mrs. Mamie Rose Royal. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mrs. Angeline Williams, who departed this life January 14, 2023. Dedication requested by the Williams family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mother Carrie Clay, who departed this life January 14, 1997. Dedication requested by the Clay family. Precious memory lingers still. In loving memory of Mother Hattie Mae Mathis, who would have celebrated her birthday January 15. Dedication requested by her beloved daughter, Dr. Ruby Jackson, and the entire Mathis family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mr. Steve O. Armstrong, who would have celebrated his birthday January 16. Dedication requested by the Armstrong family. Precious memory lingers still. In loving memory of Miss Regina Denard, who would have celebrated her birthday January 18 and departed this life January 18, 1964. Dedication requested by the Denard family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mrs. Rosalie Jones, who departed this life January 18, 1987. Dedication requested by Mrs. Dorothy Rose Jones and the entire Jones family. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mrs. Mary McCrae, who departed this life January 20th, 1987. Dedication requested by the Lofton and McCrae family. In loving memory of Mrs. Mary McCrae, who departed this life January 20th, 1987. Gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of Mr. William Larry Armstrong, who would have celebrated his birthday January 24th. Dedication requested by the Armstrong family. Gone but not forgotten. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following. Happy anniversary to Mr. Kelvin and Miss Deborah Pless, who will celebrate their anniversary Saturday, January 27th. And also happy birthday to Miss Deborah Pless, who will celebrate her birthday Wednesday, January 17th. Dedication requested by the Pless family. Happy anniversary to our friend and brother Kelvin and Sister Deborah Pless, who will celebrate their anniversary Saturday, January 27th. And happy birthday to Sister Deborah Pless. God bless your union and keep it strong. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following. Send out a very special happy birthday wish to our beloved Mother Adeline Lofton of Arabi, Georgia, church mother of the Little Rock Baptist Church, who celebrated her 94th birthday on January 11th. Dedication comes from her beloved children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Happy birthday to our beloved Mother Adeline Lofton, who celebrated her birthday Wednesday, January 11th. Well, January 11th. God bless you, Mother, and many, many more. Happy birthday to Mrs. Emma Jean Bill Mobley, Fort Valley, Georgia, who celebrated her birthday Friday, January 5th. Dedication requested by her beloved sister, Mrs. Carolyn Bill Thomas, and the entire Bill family. Happy birthday to Mrs. Kimberly Cross Williams of Duluth, Georgia, who celebrated her birthday Tuesday, January 9th. Dedication requested by her beloved aunt, Mrs. Carolyn Bill Thomas, and the entire Bill family. And happy birthday to Mrs. Carolyn Bill Thomas, who celebrated her birthday Thursday, January 11th. Dedication requested by the entire Bill family. And special birthday wishes goes out to my brother, retired Chief Master Sergeant Norman F. Dexter, who celebrated his birthday Thursday, January 11th. Dedication requested by his beloved wife, Dr. Gwendolyn Maxine Dexter, his children, and his grandson Noble, and the entire family and the staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. All says happy birthday to Norman. God bless you, and many, many more. Happy birthday to Mr. Robert Dennis, better known as Pete, who will celebrate his birthday Monday, January 15th. Dedication requested by his beloved wife, his children, grandchildren, and the entire Dennis and Colson family. Happy birthday to Mr. Willie Lee Colson, who will celebrate his birthday Tuesday, January 16th. Dedication requested by his children, grandchildren, the Dennis and Colson family. Happy birthday to Chairman Deacon Sammy McGill, who will celebrate his birthday Tuesday, January 16th. Dedication requested by his beloved wife, Sister Shanice McGill, the children, grandchildren, the entire McGill family, and the members of the Mount Moriah Baptist Church of Warwick, Georgia, where he serves as chairman of the Board of Deacons. Happy birthday to Miss Tequila Singleton, who will celebrate her birthday Wednesday, January 17th. Dedication requested by the entire family. Happy birthday to Mr. George Lawrence Jr., who will celebrate his birthday Wednesday, January 17th. Dedication requested by his beloved family. Happy birthday to Mr. Charles Kenneth Stripling, who will celebrate his birthday Wednesday, January 17th. Dedication requested by the Stripling family. Happy birthday to Mr. Benjamin Carter, better known as Early Bird, who will celebrate his birthday Thursday, January 18th. Dedication requested by the entire Carter family. And happy birthday to Mr. Peyton Beal Jr., who will celebrate his birthday Thursday, January 18th. Dedication requested by his beloved sister, Mrs. Carolyn Beal Thomas, and the entire Beal family. Special birthday wishes goes out to my mother-in-law, Mrs. Billy Ann Hall, who will celebrate her birthday Tuesday, January 16th. Dedication requested by our beloved daughter, Miss Calandra Wilkerson Parker, her grandson, Jai, and Karinsky, and the entire family. Says happy birthday to Mrs. Billy Ann Hall on Tuesday, January 16th. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following: Deacon James Smith and family, Mr. A.J. and Ms. Vera Rivers and family, Commissioner Vesta Bill Shepherd and family, and the entire Bill family, Chris County Coroner, Deacon Ricky Dawson Jr. and family, the Reverend Jerry Sanders, and the members of the Bethlehem Baptist Church of Doolin, Georgia, the Reverend Willie and Sister Helen Lockett, pastor of the Greater Pines Chapel Baptist Church of Albany, Georgia, Deacon George Jordan and family, Deacon Jerome Jordan and family, Deacon Johnny Perry, Sister Vera Perry, Mother Mary Benjamin and family, Deacon Charles Hardeman Sr. and family, the Reverend Reginald Hardeman and family, Miss Willie Mae Crapp and family, Deacon Willie Smith, Chairman of the Board of Deacons of the Beulah Land Baptist Church, Deacon Curtis Lucas Jr. and family, Mother Leela Honey Smith and family, Mother Mary Henderson and family, Deacon Leon Spears and family, Deacon William and Sister Robbie Durham and family, Mr. Lewis Kennedy and family, Mr. Tommy Kennedy and family, Miss Eddie Mae Cooks and family, Miss Pearl Reed and family, Bishop Maggie Washington and family, Elder Gardner and Miss Beulah Morgan and family, Mrs. Ola Lofton and family, Mrs. Gail Chanel and family, Mrs. Juanita Montford and family, Miss Katrina Jones and family, Mrs. Nancy Butler and family, Mr. and Mrs. A.B. Levant and family, the Dennis family, Mrs. Sidney Ruff and family, Miss Annette Ruff and family, Mrs. Quentin Ruff and family, Mother Willie Mae Leary and family of Hatley, Georgia, and the entire Carter family of Hatley, Georgia, Miss Valerie Carter and family, Mrs. Barbara Roberts and family, Miss Anthony Williams and family, Miss Sean Hutchins and family, Miss Selma Jackson and family, the Redding family, the Lawton and Epps family, the Rogers family, Mr. Charles and Miss Vivian Daniels and family, Miss F.D. Lawton and family, Mother Jessie Kate Harmon and family, Mrs. Louise Reynolds and family, Mrs. Irene Hentley and family, Miss Claudette Armstrong and family, the Christopher family, the Mobley family, Mrs. Pearl Reed and family, Mrs. Costello Levant and family, Mrs. Dorothy Westbrook and family, Dr. Christopher West and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Nelson Maynard and family, the Reverend Fred and Mrs. Jackie Brown and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Jeff Wilson and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Joseph Hoggebrook and family, Deacon Leroy and Sister Diane Thomas and family, Miss Monica Westbrook and family, the Reverend Artist and Miss LaShawn Westbrook and family, Deacon Charlie and Mrs. Westbrook and family, Mother Willie Mae Walker and family of Warwick, Georgia, Mr. Donald and Mrs. Ruby Daniels and family. It is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcements. Beloved Vice Chairman Deacon Henry King Jr., age 85, of 901 South 14th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, January 4th at his residence in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for beloved Vice Chairman Deacon Henry King Jr., age 85, will be held today, Sunday, January 14th at 1 p.m. in the sanctuary of his beloved Gethsemane Missionary Baptist Church in Cordele, Georgia. The pastor, Reverend Cecil Strawder, will officiate. The burial will follow at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Beloved Chairman Deacon, past City Commissioner of the City of Cordele, Deacon Willie B. Colson Jr., age 88, of 711 South 14th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Sunday, January 7th at the Cordele Health and Rehabilitation Center in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for beloved Chairman Deacon, past City Commissioner of the City of Cordele, Deacon Willie B. Colson Jr., age 88, will be held today, Sunday, January 14th, at 4:30 p.m. in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home in Cordele, Georgia. The Reverend Johnny Dean, pastor of the New Poplar Springs Baptist Church, will officiate. His pastor, the Reverend Nelson Maynard, pastor of the St. James Baptist Church, will deliver the eulogy. The burial will follow at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Mrs. Vivian Harrington Williamson, age 68, of 910 South 5th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, January 5th, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The memorial service for Mrs. Vivian Harrington Williamson, age 68, will be held Friday, January 19, 2024, at 11 a.m. in the chapel of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. United States Army Staff Sergeant Thomas William McRae Jr., retired, age 65, of 761 North Coney Road, Cordele, Georgia, died Monday, January 8th, at his residence in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Army Staff Sergeant Thomas William McRae Jr., retired, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. Mr. Davion S. Levant, age 30, of 701 West 28th Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, January 5th, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Davion S. Levant, age 30, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. United States Air Force veteran, retired educator, Mr. James Edward Holloway Sr., age 63, of 178 Old Andersonville Road, Andersonville, Georgia, died Friday, January 12th, at his residence in Andersonville, Georgia. The funeral service for United States Air Force veteran and retired educator, Mr. James Edward Holloway Sr., age 63, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. Miss Thelma Dolores Johnson, affectionately known as Sis, age 69, of Cordele, Georgia, died early this morning, Sunday, January 14th, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Miss Thelma Dolores Johnson, affectionately known as Sis, will be announced at a later date pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors serving Cordele and Diana are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Our final selection for this morning is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones were laid to rest during the past week. The family of Mr. Samuel McCluster Jr. of Richland, Georgia. The family of Mr. Willie Lee Boone of Americus, Georgia. The family of beloved church mother, Mother Grace Adams Patrick of Cordele, Georgia. This selection is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones will be laid to rest during this week. The family of beloved Vice Chairman Deacon Henry King Jr. of Cordele, Georgia. The family of beloved Deacon Chairman and past City Commissioner of the City of Cordele, Deacon Willie B. Colson Jr. of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Vivian Harrington Williamson of Cordele, Georgia. The family of United States Army Staff Sergeant Thomas William McRae Jr., retired, of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Davion S. Levant of Cordele, Georgia. The family of United States Air Force veteran and retired educator, Mr. James Edward Holloway Sr. of Andersonville, Georgia, and the family of Miss Thelma Dolores Johnson, affectionately known as Sis. This selection is dedicated to all of the sick and shut-in, to all patients in the local and surrounding hospitals, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, to our beloved ministers and their devoted family members, to all retired educators, to the men and women serving in armed forces, both stateside and abroad, to our veterans, and to everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning. It's a pleasure for us to bring it to you. Our program goes out in memory of our past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams, to my wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, to my son, Jai Wilkerson Parker, and again to my mother-in-law, Mrs. Billy Ann Hall, who will be celebrating her birthday on Tuesday, January 16th. Happy birthday, and many, many more. This selection goes out to my brother, retired Chief Master Sergeant Norman F. Dexter, who celebrated his birthday during this past week. Said again to Norman, happy birthday, and many, many more. To his wife, Dr. Gwendolyn Maxine Dexter, to their grandson Noble, to my sister, Mrs. Patsy Jackson, and her husband, Mr. Jim Jackson of Cordele, Georgia. This selection goes out to my niece, Mrs. Vera Mathis, and Mrs. Florine Manning of Cordele, Georgia. This selection goes out to my nephew, Deacon Kenneth Smith, program chairman of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Baptist Church. Goes out to our pastor, Dr. K.M. Williams, inviting you for worship this morning in Sunday school at 9 a.m. with Superintendent Deacon John Stubb and Deacon Donald Talbot in charge. Morning worship at 9:30 a.m. And again, to each and everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning, God bless you on this second Sunday in January 2024. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope you've enjoyed our program. Tune in again on next Sunday morning. And remember, in your time of need, contact the competent, capable, and dependable staff at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.